Something with them. Okay, testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hopefully this works. Wait a second. Hold on. Maybe this works. Maybe this works. Hold on. Still learning the new ways, folks. This is Whacked Out Wrestling, and hopefully this can change something. Hopefully. Hold on one second. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hopefully this works. We're still learning how to do this one through Skype. Hopefully this works, because apparently they can't do the normal thing for these. I'm Thomas S.K. Green, and we are with Whacked Out Wrestling, and we're working with ALWF, the official course of Slam Bang Western Style Wrestling. And hopefully I can get online. Sorry, just trying to get this call in.
Digital's great. Digital cameras, phone cameras, we can shoot what we want. But we hardly ever print our pictures. And that's the best part of photography. Pictures. Colourful, beautiful pictures you can feed in your hands, or put in an album, or in a frame. We use real pictures, and we want them now.
With the new Kodak kiosk, Kodak quality prints have finally come to digital. For digital prints in seconds, just look for the nearest Kodak kiosk sign.
Testing. You got it? Just the type of bugs you get when you're trying to learn the new post hangouts on here, folks. Sorry about this. We're still trying to go through on this one and just learning the new errors. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Try our Properties Cappuccino Pepper.
Okay, you on? All right. Okay then we're already live. So let's try to work this one and hope it goes through. Blue line. Yep. This is the problem with losing Hangouts on air, people. We still have to try and find out how to do this afterwards.
So we're making things up to go along. Which those people who are registration at Whacked Out Wrestling Contest know that's complete.
Yes, that's one of the problems with this one. And I thought the biggest problem with the new era would be having to wear pants during this podcast.
You're wearing pants?
Yes. But
I don't think I would accept you.
Yep. But this is the Whacked Out Wrestling, which is also a bonus on this one, and it happens on the worst possible day for the Afterlife Wrestling Federation, as everybody heard today. the Afterlife Wrestling Federation has signed Harley Race to an exclusive contract for all eternity.
We can spend some time talking about Harley if you want. Everybody knows his accomplishments. Everyone knows what a tough guy he was. But looking over Twitter earlier, I can tell you that everybody respected Dave Boy Smith Jr. talked about what a great guy he was, how great he was to the family. And Grace was one of those guys who looked after people who looked after him. I can tell you that he was a part owner of the NWA even during his time in the Wrestling Federation. He would not abandon the group that they were.
Yep, and I believe you had a good story about that once, correct?
Well, it's more of Pat O'Connor's story than a Harley Race story, so you tell me if it's appropriate.
It's appropriate. I mean, O'Connor is one of his allies now in the ALWF, so.
Well, Pat O'Connor was being proposed for a lawsuit against David Von Erich. No, it wasn't David, it was Kerry. It was one of these really dumb things where Kerry threw rules in the crowd and somebody got hit by it, so he for way too much money. Before the deposition, the lawyers told there are two questions you can't ask. One of them is, who is the silent partner in NWA? And the other is, of course, is wrestling free. This being in mid to late 80s. So, as part of the deposition, they asked O'Connor who was the NWA. He said, well, there are three owners. One of them is me, another is Sam Mushnick, and the third owner who's a silent partner who should remain as such. That partner was Harley Race, who was in the WWF at the time. The real fun, though, came at the end. And after the deposition was almost done, he said, wait, I have one more question. And Pat O'Connor leans forward, and you have to remember, O'Connor's arms are skewed, especially his forearms. He leans forward on his forearms, glares at the kid, and says, and what would that be? There was no question.
Mm-hmm. Yep, all the times before Vince McMahon would actually say, yes, wrestling is real. One of the many reasons, or wrestling is fake. One of the many things that Vince McMahon ruins. Indeed, Vince McMahon may ruin more things than WCW. And yet you don't see that hashtag, do you?
Well, Vince, the problem is Vince is the reason. I believe, to paraphrase Homer Simpson, Vince McMahon is the cause of and solution to most of wrestling's problems.
Yes. And he also makes you want to drink when you're watching it. So he also ties with the other one.
That's such good shit.
Yes. But as for this one, we don't know who's going to be getting him for the ALWF, but you have to assume that he would be going through in this one. So
You gotta put he's too big for him.
yeah. Yeah, because NXT, it's pushing it when they have to bring in the Dynamite Kid to NXT, but Harley Race's accomplishments are just too big for it to go through. He's got to go main roster, so it's just a question: does Raw or SmackDown get him?
Well, you gotta remember, the other thing with Dynamite Kid, he was great in the junior heavyweight division, he was great in the tag team division. He hasn't really been tested to me, and that's kind of what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens going forward. That's for another time, though.
Yeah. Until then, we have the reports from the July show for the red brand on this one, and for the blue brand. What was the info? Because I know most of that was about the G1 to try and get a challenger for Roddy Piper at Eternia.
Yeah, it's the Road to Edenia, the annual G1 style tournament. We have 14 wrestlers in 2 blocks, and we're going to do it the same way they do in Japan. A few changes, I should say. First off, matches 20 minutes time limits instead of 30. The other big change is that any draw, either double count out or double DQ, does award 1 point each. I know in the G1 these matches pass the full no contest and nobody gets points, but we're going to stick with that formula for now. The for this is really amazing. We can look at the 14 wrestlers who got it as. Here we are. In Block A, let's listen to this. You have Ed Lewis, you have Eddie Gilbert, Lou Thez, Harold Mayo Jr., Terry Gordy, Bert Duncan, and Buddy Rogers, who's put in this after lost Roddy Piper at the Even show. The block, you have Big Daddy, Freddie Blassie, Hector Garza, JYD, Dr. Dog, Carl Gotch, Harry Von Erich, TV Jam, and Saru Masala. Now, just looking at that field right now, sorry, I have to go do some stuff with my dinner, make sure it's all set. So I'll give you the floor for about 3 to 5 minutes there, Mr. Green. I want you to look over both those blocks. Before we start, just tell me, what are your thoughts on it? And remember, this tournament is Roddy Piper and Edenia for the ALWF Heavyweight Championship.
Well, the big part about most of these is the fact that with Roddy Piper's block, it seems like Block A has more of the old school style performers, and a lot of the performers who are very, very serious, very strong on it. And you have, of course, people like Carl Gotch in the Block B, and that's one of those where he's going with the more new style of this form. And this is always going to be a question because, as we know, there is the rule that an old dog can be taught new tricks, and most of these wrestlers will be performing at the level they would probably be performing at if they came up in 2019, as more people come through and want a more obvious style. But there's also the case where you also have to realize that there's going to be a very plotting style for Group A on it, and Group B will have more of the old school, but still more athletic than you'd get in a modern era. In Block A, it's kind of weird because there's a lot of people who could do their part, but ultimately, I don't know who would go through on Block A. I assume that Buddy Rogers probably does on it, but it's a question mark there. Block B, after how hot he's been for the last few weeks, it seems like Mitsuharu Misawa's to lose, and that would go through. Of course, the spoiler would be Junkyard Dog, who, if he won, could presumably get the shot if he won the G1, and also then cash in if he lost, which is a pretty interesting protection right there. So ultimately, if I had to go with it, I'm assuming Buddy Rogers versus Mitsuharu Misawa, and this is where Misawa gets through and gets his shot at Piper. Which is one of the weird things, because SmackDown has a lot of big names who are ready to go through, and they have a lot of big guys like Perro Aguayo Jr., Kerry Von Erich, who are getting too big for the tag team division and are ready for their close-up as singles. And it's also weird because we see the problems with Perros Del Mal, where they may be going a little too far, too close to this one and could go further, but we're also seeing people like Kerry Von Erich, who honestly, he's never going to turn on David, and David's never going to turn on Kerry. And you have to assume the rest of the Von Erich family wouldn't let this turn happen, and it's going to be interesting what goes through from there. The television title being involved with these tag team divisions is even some more interesting because you have a lot of good TV title-worthy wrestlers who just are mixing up in the tag division and the singles ranks. So ultimately, there's a lot of different ways this could go, and I don't know what's the right way happens.
That's the beauty of a tournament like this is that when you have a deep field, you can see a lot of people before. I know in New Japan when they do the G1, one of the thrilling things is that you could see just about anybody what you want. There's usually 3 or 4 candidates per block. Now, the fact that the winner basically gets the title match there, WrestleMania, does sort of cut back on who's going to win the whole thing. But at the same time, you've got a lot of talent. Just look at the field this year. Before it began, you had Okada, Tanahashi, Kenta, Ibushi on one side. You had Moxley, White, Naito, Ishii on the other. You had a deep field at the top. Mm-hmm. And in our version, that's one of the best parts, that we have this deep field and anything can happen.
Yeah. And it's also the fact that there's really no killer, and no filler in this one. And that might be a fact that SmackDown is a little weak on those ones, but you're not going to see someone like a Toru Yano or a Taichi in this field. even if it usually adds some benefits to this New Japan style, it's all guys who have a chance to take on Piper and do well at it. And that's really the good thing about the ALWF, where everybody seems like they can be a world champion.
And I hear there's rumors that starting in 2020, they might push it back up to 20 wrestlers like they did before the brand extension. I don't know. What do you think?
That would be interesting if they do that. But honestly, if they had something like one on Raw and one on SmackDown, that might be too much. And then you'd also have the question of what do you do with NXT there? Because you have to assume that if you're going with that one, you'd need about 50, maybe as many as 15 Raw, 15 SmackDown, and 10 NXT to really do it right. But then you've got a 40-man G1, and that would just be insane for it. I mean, the Booker is literally God, but who cares about that? But even he'd have some problems with this.
I mean, that's one of the nice things about the Blue Brand is that they have built themselves up really with classic wrestlers who have a chance to really go all the way. You don't have the it's apples and oranges. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
You don't have the stable wars like you have on the red side, where really there's a pecking order within each one that changes the look.
Yeah, and you also have the fact that it's a pecking order between the stables. Like you have the Rise of the Rising Suns, and they're dominant, but at the cost of the Heenan family and the Grand Wizard and his crew that are losing a little bit as well. And eventually that goes to the case where you see things like Luis Spicoli having the run of his life as one of Los Gringos Locos, as Eddie Guerrero's rising tide lifts all boats. But you also have the weakness of what do you do when something as it goes downwards? Like it ends up making the Rising Suns superstars, and then you have on low end people like the Sons of Eternity, which are basically glorified jobbers right now.
Well, let's get into that right there. In fact, let's get to the July show, special show that the Red Brand put on. There were 7 matches on the main show. Let's go down that list. Starting with the big one up top, a double gauntlet match.
Yes.
Sole winner being the.
Yes, this was. Yeah, this was a big deal on this one because the double gauntlet had most of the Rising Suns trying to fight for this one. On Team B, you had Mr. Fuji, who was guaranteed to start the match as part of the rules, up against Team A's Hayabusa, who was guaranteed to start the match. The winner of that match, if Fuji won, he would face the second person on the Team A. If Hayabusa won, he'd face the second person on Team B. But there was also a bit of a difference as well, and there was some stipulations where if Team A won, then the catch of this one was that Rikidozan would be guaranteed to be number 5 on Team B. And since Shinya Hashimoto was, of course, on Team A, this would mean if it got to Team B, there's the chance that Shinya Hashimoto would get his hands on Rikidozan once again. But there was a curse on this one, of course. And you know the curse on it was number 5 on Team A was going to be Galactic Champion Andre the Giant. And in exchange for Jack Tunney waiving Rikidozan's no-compete rule after WrestleMania to be on Team B, Team A had to. If it got to Andre the Giant, the Galactic title would be on the line for every one of Andre's matches. So it was possible that Andre could have to defend the title against Mr. Fuji, then Toru Tanaka, then Bruiser Brody, then Giant Baba, then Rikidozan. But that's also a problem for the Rising Suns and their ally Brody, because what happens if, say, Toru Tanaka beat Andre the Giant? Does Rikidozan deal with his young lion as the champion? What if Giant Baba beat him? That could mean that Baba would have the chance against him. And what if Bruiser Brody did, who was basically the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and he was just there because he wanted to get his hands on Crash Holly. He didn't care about the Rising Suns, but if he can get the world title, he'll be happy with it.
Yeah, a lot of chaos in that match, a lot of ways that can go. And there's an additional stipulation, which is that
Yes.
each team had somebody that they wanted at ringside.
Yes. On the case of Team A, you have Dusty Rhodes wanted to bring his coach and his good friend Juanita Wright to the ringside with them. This was countered by the fact that NXT superstar Lynn Byron was becoming friendly with the Rising Suns, and they decided they wanted her on this one. So there was an extra level where the winning they would have a fight earlier on the card. The winner of the fight would get to be at the ringside for them. The loser of the fight would be forced to enter a go-go dancing cage in her bra and panties for the duration of the show. No, Vince Russo is not dead yet. No, but his career is dead. Ha-cha-cha-cha-cha.
Oh, okay. That explains it, right?
Yes. But then we had...
The Intercontinental Championship is going to be decided. Eddie Guerrero, the champion since Easter show, taking on Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig.
Yeah, and that one also was weird as well, because there were two rings in that one, and you had, in one ring, Eddie Guerrero would face Kurt Hennig for the Intercontinental title. In the other ring, you'd have the team of Rick Rude and Tom Zenk taking on Eddie's buddies and Los Gringos Locos of Art Barr and Luis Spicoli for the tag titles. So there was a chance that you could have switches on both sides.
I'm not sure I understand why they had both matches run simultaneously.
I think it was because they said that for a few weeks on it, you had Eddie Guerrero defending against Kurt Hennig, but every time Guerrero did, Rude and Zenk would interfere. Likewise, whenever Rude and Zenk were defending the tag titles, Art Barr and Luis Spicoli would interfere on them. So finally, Jack Tunney said, okay, we're not leaving anything to chance. Both of these matches are going on simultaneously, with the stipulation that whoever won their match first would legally be allowed to interfere in the second match.
Well, that's an interesting turn of events right there. Big match among people who were just outside the contender spot for that black title. Nick Bachman, Crown Jewel, the Heenan family, finding himself going against Argentina Roca. Yeah, and that just seems like one of those matches that it's just Argentina Roca has been rising the ranks again on it, and Bockwinkel seems like he's been on a losing streak since he lost the title and lost his protector in Andre the Giant. So Roca would be the perfect one to try and get back on the right swing of things for him. We had tag team action as well as one of the newer teams. Actually, two of the newer teams. It was basically a battle between the Public Enemy and the Sons of Eternity, and that just seems like a good quasi-hardcore match for it, because even though you don't expect it from Chris Kanyon for it, he and Adrian Adonis have been able to put in some bloody brawls themselves for it. And it actually was even better with Kanyon adding that technical style to that hardcore nature, and you can tell that it would even be possible that he would work with the Jersey Triad down in NXT as well. But it's also been weird because the Public Enemy have been having problems with the California Hells Angels interfering every time they fought the Sons of Eternity, and they promised they had a weapon that would counteract all the problems of the Dupree brothers to make sure they finally got a fair match at this card. And our final one is a huge 8-man tag team match that a lot of people look forward to as far as fantasy booking. Now it's happening. Owen Hart, David Lloyd Smith, Jimmy and Lionheart, Brian Pillman, the Hart Foundation taking on the Grand Wizards crew of Bernie Ladd, Big Man Vader, and 3 Minute Warning. That one was a bit of a surprise to me. It must have been added on ALWF.com, so it was a pretty big one there. So I'll have to do more research on that one when it shows up. So all right, we're now ready to start. Let's get to reviewing. First off, there was a nice match on the pre-show. I assume you have those notes. Yeah, the pre-show match was
a pretty straightforward battle as Pat O'Connor took on Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And this was a pretty good matchup where O'Connor had tried to take on Snuka's more aerial game on it, but of course O'Connor is perfectly straightforward on it. Any more thoughts towards that one for this match?
Well, I think the two guys who battled in the Pacific region, O'Connor beat New Zealand, Snuka from Fiji, worked their way up the ranks there to the main show, and I gotta say that Jimmy Snuka really seems like he is kind of extra on the Red brand, or at least it did anywhere. Pat O'Connor's kind of goes to his upward ability. I think he's probably the favorite in this match.
Yeah, ultimately that's one of the weird things where Snuka just has a lot of things where there's a lot of people ahead of him, and there's not a lot of benefits for it. While O'Connor, he's the much bigger name of the two, but it also feels like his time is ready to go. It seems like he'd be better served by a draft pick on SmackDown, so hopefully that can change his fortunes a little bit. But even with this one, he was still very able to take on Snuka and had his way with the Superfly. So
And,
yeah,
O'Connor catching Snuka in midair.
Yeah.
AA got the pin, and we're ready to go to the main show.
Yeah, and the first one on it was that Grand Wizards crew versus the Hart Foundation match, and this was it was a weird battle on this one because the Grand Wizards crew was much more powerful, much more dominant, and the Hart Foundation had Neidhart and Davey Boy Smith, but they couldn't really match up with all four of them. But Vader, for the first time in his ALWF career, Vader looked good here. It's like that he'd always been good in squash matches, but Vader actually was throwing Neidhart around like he was a cruiserweight or something. He just looked like he was ready in this match. It's surprising.
Yeah, we saw Vader get a Final Four spot in the Rumble, but we were always wondering why they didn't follow up with that. Now it looks like something is getting better. It's like Vader is reaching the spot.
Yeah.
And obviously, in a match like this, you had Pillman get beat up for a long time. Owen came in. It looked like he could turn the tide, but we had no idea how big Vader was.
Yeah, and ultimately it was surprising that usually this was one of the weaknesses with the stable wars on the Red brand as well, because you seem to think that, yeah, you have the 3-minute warning or a tag team, but Ernie Ladd until then seemed like the star. But this was Vader's coming out party. And it was also weirder that this was not just Vader's coming out party, but it was also weird in this one. You could buy Ernie Ladd not doing anything because Ernie Ladd was the type of, you want to see me in here? Pay me. I'm doing my thing for it, and I don't need to do anything more than I need to do here. But then you also have something like, for example, Davey Boy Smith, I don't even think got into the match. And that was surprising there as well, especially since you saw Owen Hart getting beaten up badly. You saw Jim Neidhart getting beaten up badly. You saw Brian Pillman getting beaten up badly, but Davey Boy Smith never really got into this match.
He's carrying an injury?
I don't know if it's an injury on it, but it was just like he didn't show up. You could almost see that Neidhart was asking, tag in, but Davey Boy just didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. That's going to be something to look forward to. End of the day, it's a Vader bomb on Pillman, and the Grand Wizards crew gets the win. Yeah,
and honestly, that's probably a good thing because Ernie Ladd's been very good, but he's always seemed to be good in the way of he's a good matchup for Bobo Brazil. They need another good member of the Grand Wizards crew, and if this is Vader's coming out party, they have what they needed.
All right, let's go on to the next match. match now?
The next match was your randoms. You had two good matches, so you had to have a cool down match on this one. And this was going to be Bowling Shoe Ugly. It was Sweet Sapphire versus Lynn Byron. And,
But
yep. This is, well, it's exactly what you'd expect it to be. Let's put it that way. It was a lot of some cheap stuff, a lot of joking on it. It was close to a comedy match, close to a divas match. It was pretty much straightforward. And then, of course, since apparently the ALWF is sane, Juanita Wright got the win, and so the good guys had their hero, their coach on there. And if nothing else, Byron may do some space work in NXT, but she managed to work well in the stripped to her bra panties and dragged kicking and screaming to the go-go dancing cage. So there is.
I think we can all agree that nobody wanted to see Juanita Wright.
I don't know. In the afterlife, everyone is beautiful, though they still probably didn't want to see Juanita Wright in the go-go cage.
Right. So up next we had I believe it was Roca and Bachminkle next.
Yep. In this one you had, and this was it was a styles clash, but in a good way. It was like Roca's high flying and Bachwinkle's completely straightforward technical style. They don't seem to click well, but they clicked well enough to work it. And ultimately you had the same points on it. Bachwinkle trying to get back on his winning ways, trying to go through, but Roca just having some fun with him, using his acrobatics, his high-flying skill, his controlled frenzy, and just managing to take on Bachwinkle really well.
All right. So how did this one wind up?
Well, Bachwinkle tried for a ankle lock, but Roca was able to reverse it into a makeshift Trouble in Paradise and got the victory that way.
All right. So I got to say, I'm curious. How is he handling the fact that we only his family's a bit of a tailspin?
Well, that's one of the weird things on it, where Heenan's one of those guys who most of what he's been doing is broadcast journalism with Gorilla Monsoon anyway, who basically retired to go onto the announce table as it is. But then you also have the fact that Heenan is one of those guys where you can tell he might want to turn face to take on the Rising Suns, but even in this afterlife, Heenan's still a weasel even there. It just wouldn't be him to go after him.
Although I think the past would be about making awful jokes.
Yeah, of course, and ultimately that's going to be the question mark, where, again, it seems like the Heenan family would be better served on SmackDown than they would be on Raw right now, because unless Heenan were to jump ship and decide that the Rising Suns were where the real money was, just doesn't seem to work that way.
Well, after this match, we had a brief intermission as we brought the second ring into play.
Mm-hmm.
It was now time for a 2-for-1 special.
Yep, and you could see it go through as you had the Robbinsdale connection of Hennig, Rude, and Zank go through, and you still saw Larry Hennig at ringside. And I'm not sure if he's going to NXT, if they're going to be bringing him in with the group, or it just seems like it's going long. But I suppose that with the Eternity, you have an eternity to get on with it. So, heck, this is what we're doing, where we still see all of the Gorgeous George matches, and we don't see him get on with the fact that Chavo Guerrero Sr. is Gorgeous George's sidekick. So,
not supposed to say that out loud yet.
Well, it's one of those things that everybody knows, but nobody knows yet.
Right.
But then we had the same thing as, again, it's weird to see how well these teams work on it, and it was just Hennig and Guerrero doing another great Hennig and Guerrero match without any problems, and then Rude and Zenk putting on a pretty good clinic with Barr and Spicoli.
Must have been a little pretty proud of both matches at once. So they able to time it well.
Yeah. Well, what did you say? I didn't get it off that one.
I imagine that you had a little bit of trouble following two matches at once. How did that work out?
Well, it was one of those. It was kind of a stretch to see, but it would be similar to the World War III matches in the mortal realm, which can be a hard thing to see. But it was one of those where at least you had a hot team like Los Gringos Locos, and the Robbinsdale connection had been getting a pretty good reaction themselves as heels. So there is at least the arena was loud, even if they didn't know which one to look at first. And of course, it's always easy.
The first, who won first?
Well, the first match to be won was Eddie Guerrero, and he got three amigos, got the frog splash, and took out Hennig. And this was when the fun began, as you had Eddie and Rude and Zenk taking on Barr and Spicoli, but it was almost weird that Eddie Guerrero couldn't lie, cheat, or steal if it was all legal.
Oh, like that's never stopped it before.
Yeah, but it's one thing if you're actually cheating because you're cheating. It's another thing when you're cheating because they're allowing you to cheat. And it's also the point where it would have been better for Guerrero if not for the fact that Barr and Spicoli had been doing a lot of their antics beforehand. You had Barr doing all his Beetlejuice antics on Tom Zenk. You had Louis Spicoli pushing his big cardboard cutout of the Virgin Mary into Rick Rude's face. And I believe Rick Rude probably is going to get fined for saying, "She ain't anymore." But yes, that's what.
Right.
Yes.
Moving on.
Yes, ultimately the big ending was Rude got the Rude Awakening on Spicoli and got the victory. And Zenk was able to do it, and they said that Eddie could interfere legally, but didn't say Hennig couldn't interfere otherwise on it, and Hennig kept Eddie from it, and it was what it was. But right after the match, Jack Tunney said, "This is not standing. It's not going through. We're going to guarantee at Edenia, history will be made as a guarantee. 6-man tag team action at Edenia. Los Gringos Locos versus the Robbinsdale Connection. One last time. No rematch for either. Whichever team wins, winner takes all. It's a guarantee one title will change hands at Edenia."
Wow. That's something else.
Yep. It's usually a question mark to actually guarantee a title's going to change hands, but if it's going to be either whoever gets the pinfall will be the new Intercontinental Champion. Whichever two team members don't are going to be the tag champions. So that's going to be very interesting right there.
So just to clarify, it's impossible that Art Barr gets the pin.
If
he takes Eddie's Intercontinental title and Eddie moves laterally to become a tag champion.
Yeah, it is possible that Louis Spicoli could win the Intercontinental title, and Art Barr and Eddie Guerrero would be the tag champs. And it's possible that Tom Zenk could win the Intercontinental title, and Curt Hennig and Rick Rude could be the tag champs.
That's a crazy match, I'll tell you that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this pulls out, because with those stipulations in mind, you have to think the two funds are going to be tested.
Yeah, that's going to be very, very big on this one, and this is going to be a question mark because you have to wonder if Barr and Spicoli are getting a little bit jealous of Eddie Guerrero's rise to the top themselves, while they stay as a relatively less known team themselves. And you have to know that just because Curt Hennig, Rick Rude, and Tom Zenk all went to high school together doesn't mean they're going to be the best of friends.
Yeah, you got to think Zenk feels like he's left behind. I'm not so sure about side, I think that at some point you recognize that even people that stirs the drink.
Yeah.
Although, down the line, anything is possible, especially when,
Yeah, and even if you do, there's still...
those six-pack challenges, guys.
Yeah, plus, even if it does, the Robbinsdale connection is the question mark as well. I mean, Larry Hennig's been watching their matches for a while now, and Tom Zenk was always a much better face than a heel, and he never really fit as well with this Robbinsdale connection, so it's entirely possible that Zenk even turns face for it.
A lot of ways that could go. That could be the first match for Edenia, a big deal. But back to the July show, and the next match has they made sure to designate only one ring as a target.
Well, it's a moot point because it's not like they're going to be using the ring anyway, so come on.
What's that?
It's not like they're going to be using a ring anyway, come on.
Yeah. Chris Cannon and Adrian Adonis in a street fight, by the three, taking on the public enemy, Johnny Grunge and Rocco Robbins. 12 versus 2 fights. This is up their alley, but it's 2-on-4 and wait a minute, wait.
Who's that woman who's attacking the Dupree brothers? That is...
now there's a strategy.
Yep. And that looks like Ashley Massaro there. I am in shock.
Wait, who? What?
Yep. Apparently, Ashley Massaro is the weapon that they said they had to take out the Dupree brothers. And if you have the former Diva and Diva Search winner on this one, and the Playboy Playmate, that seems like a good weapon to use against the Duprees.
Right. Okay. So with all the seconds basically neutralized, it was a 2-on-2 war, and this is the thing the Pokemon as well. They're hard to describe the matches, but they're always doing something.
Yeah.
You look at the Fortnite setup in ECW, they really have effect. And we saw it in their latter matches in NXT. We saw it, they took on the hardliners. They have this ability to produce chaos that is alarming. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether Adonis and Canyon are along those lines. They never really seem to kind of embrace insanity.
Mm-hmm.
So how was it as far as matchup?
Well, honestly, it's one of those matches where it seems worse on this one, but at least Adonis and Canyon play the biker gimmick well, and they know that they have to try and do some work there. And in addition, you also had the fact that Rocco Rock was always a little bit more of the high flyer and the work on it, and he was able to mesh fairly well with Canyon in the match, while Johnny Grunge was always more of the power, the pure brawler, the hardcore guy. And Adrian Adonis may not have been hardcore per se, but he was able to be a tough guy, badass for a lot of his work. So those two managed to click pretty well as well. It's
talk for a second, just a rule. Ted Petty, Rocco Rock might be one of the more underrated wrestlers in CW history as far as his ability to control a match, keep crowd in a match, and to provide variety. He really was sort of the guy in the ring and help elevate Public Enemy from beyond dark controllers to ECW stages.
Exactly. And that it was one where it's not like he was incredibly good, but he was good enough to help play to their strengths and hide their weaknesses. And that was what turned the Public Enemy into a big tag team there as well.
And they went on, let's face it, they went on to WCW. They had some pretty good fights there, too.
Yeah.
I remember they and the Nasty Boys on that famous Fashion Beach card had a wonderful street fight.
Well, yeah, because the Nasty Boys were basically an incredibly underrated team by the Scott Keithification of pro wrestling fandom, where people forgot that the Nasty Boys were that proto-hardcore team. They were that core team that could easily have been in ECW and would have been legends there. But because everybody thought that...
A lot of that has to do with the fact that at the time, really, they Monday Night Wars again, but afterwards were showing themselves.
Yeah. But that's one of those weaknesses where you go that hard for too long, eventually it's going to show up. But it was a very good high flying one. And then you had the Public Enemy take the advantage in this one. Just as the Sons of Eternity tried it, Ashley Massaro called to it, and a whole eternity full of chairs fell on the Dupree brothers. It was like the plague of chairs upon their house.
You know, I understand she didn't watch these movies but never asked the audience when she could, doesn't it?
Yes. It did not end well, but
it's okay.
Yes. But it did help make sure that the Duprees were out of action for good, and once it happened there, Drive By and the Public Enemy get their victory.
All right. So while we set up the double gauntlet and get an excavation mode, get an excavation backwards down to finish the Dupree brothers out from the chairs. Let's remind all of you, Edenia, under this one, is a double-branded show. We know that it's going to be those Rangers locals and the Robin connection in a six-man tag for both your partner on tag team titles. We also know, by the way, that Roddy Piper is the winner of the Road to Edenia tournament, and this was just added. Both brands will be producing one person, and they will have a one-on-one match. After Edenia, there will be a shuffle of the deck. Every person will do so randomly except for one. And one person will be chosen by the picture of the winner of this match. So a lot of stakes in that one. I decided to show their hand when they're setting out for that match, but that is a big deal right there because every year we get the shuffle.
Yeah.
It's weird. You get matchups. You get people going over at the same time doing their rivalries. But to have somebody you choose, that's a big deal.
Yeah. That's always the question mark, and you have to assume that it's going to be someone big who switches over. We're talking someone like a Nick Bockwinkel, someone like a Buddy Rogers, someone of the level that, oh shit, this person just jumped over. Because it has to be. If you're doing something like this, you're not exactly sending Arnold Skolin over or something like that.
Right. Now, let's be clear here. If you own a title on your ring, you're exempt from being selected. That's all.
That's a surprise on it because a few other times they had said that if that one pick was a champion, then the champion would have to vacate their title belt and go through that way. So there have been times when
okay. So I just wanted the championships went through. I thought the champions went through. That makes more sense.
Yeah, it's very rare that a champion has gone through as that one pick, but if in the event someone were to pick, say, Andre the Giant, he would have to vacate the Galactic Championship and go through. And I believe there was one year that he vacated the title, and the person who had the wish cashed in immediately and got the belt that way.
Interesting. Okay. So this brings us now to our main event, a double gauntlet at the regular title on the line.
And the tag teams were on this thing. They announced the batting orders beforehand. Batting first for the Rising Suns.
Teams, by the way.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. Your teams, by the way, anybody else write it down? On
yeah.
one side, you have Bruiser Brody, Giant Baba, Mr. Fuji, Ricky Nazan, Toru Tanaka. On the other side, you had Andre the Giant, champion. You had Crash Holly, Dusty Rhodes, and Shinya Hashimoto. Now, the batting order you said was submitted ahead of time.
Yeah.
So both sides are beating.
Yeah. And to give the info on the batting order as well, you had Mr. Fuji would go first, Toru Tanaka would go second, Bruiser Brody would go third, Giant Baba would go fourth, and Rikita-zan would go fifth. And on the good guys team, Hayabusa would go first, Crash Holly would go second, Dusty Rhodes would go third, Shinya Hashimoto would go fourth, and Andre the Giant would go fifth. But if it got to Andre, the Galactic title would be on the line for every other match.
Yep. So we have Mr. Fuji and Hayabusa in the 2000 class there.
Yep.
What you see?
honestly, this was one of those matches where you just, on the one hand, Mr. Fuji had more than you'd think on it, but this was basically an excuse to show Hayabusa doing insane moves all over, all of the eternity. Like, this was like Ricochet if Ricochet was literally a cartoon character. There was no easier way to put it on this one. Hayabusa was already a high flyer in the mortal realm, but this was just more of a thing of beauty to watch.
So he's definitely improved his style, become a lot cleaner, a lot crisper. That's what you're saying.
Basically. And Hayabusa easily defeated Mr. Fuji, and it really wasn't even a threat on this one. And you could see his teammates celebrating. You could see Juanita Wright celebrating alongside him. It was
All right.
Yep.
Professor Tanaka, come on down.
Yep. And this was one of those where it was a little bit more of a battle because Toru Tanaka was able to ground Hayabusa and try and get the attack, but Hayabusa still looked like a big attack. The only problem was that Tanaka was able to take a lot out of him, go after the legs, go after his weakened neck from the mortal realm on it, and was able to. It was still a big win for Hayabusa, but Toru Tanaka made him work for it, is what it came down to.
So you've got Hayabusa, he's put his team up too, but he's really tired. He's right at the beginning, and Bruiser Brody, come on down.
And this was not good on it because Bruiser Brody was not happy, and Hayabusa did 2 flips off a big brogue kick by Bruiser Brody. It was not a quick match, a short match on it. It went easily. Brody pinned Hayabusa and took him out. But Hayabusa did look good in defeat, and that does look like a plus for him going forward. But
at this point, you have 4-on-3 and Crash Holly, come on, no, really, Crash, come on down.
Well, you've got to be fair on this one. Crash Holly has been doing well on this. It seems like a surprise that he was on the team, but what you need to remember is that since his debut where he shockingly pinned Bruiser Brody's been trying to get Crash Holly for it. He's been running all over heaven, all over the eternity, trying to hide from Brody as Brody kept following him around. And this was one of those weaknesses where Crash was doing it due to his loyalty to Dusty Rhodes and Shinya Hashimoto, who took him under their wing, but it also meant that there was the chance that Bruiser Brody would get his hands on Crash. And he did. Many, many times. The only thing is this was not a quick match. Bruiser Brody has been pissed off at Crash Holly for 3 months now. He savored this match. He destroyed Crash Holly. He taught Crash Holly what hardcore really was. This was not a short match as well on it because Brody just wanted to get every ounce of the beating he wanted to give Holly for so long onto it. This match could have been over in 30 seconds. He took 5 minutes to beat down Holly. It was only until the referee threw a white towel into the ring to say, no, it's over for this match to stop.
And Brody glared. He was angry that he had to move on. And as he glared, as he got angry, he went after Juanita Wright, which is perfect timing because Dusty Rhodes, come on down.
Yep. And Dusty Rhodes was ready for the attack anyway. He had already liked Crash Holly, and he got him madder by going after Juanita Wright. And then Brody had the weakness that he took so much out of himself by just trying to give Holly the beating that Dusty Rhodes was able to go through. Rhodes kept up the attack, kept going for it, and it was a pretty good match on this one anyway. Brody kept the fight going, but eventually Dusty Rhodes got the victory again.
And with that in mind, things were looking a lot better, but Giant Pablo, come on down.
Yup, and this was a question mark because we know Dusty Rhodes has been able to beat Giant Baba before. We know Dusty's had some history with him, but this was a big battle anyway. And Dusty and Baba kept going for this one, and it took a little while for it. Dusty had fought Andre, he fought Baba, and he's been trying to get these battles, but Baba was vicious, he was ruthless, and he was able to attack Dusty with everything. Ultimately, Dusty tried to go down swimming, but after 15 minutes, Baba got the victory.
And then the moment we were all waiting for.
That,
Edenia Hashimoto, come on down.
and the crowd was going crazy for him. Shinya's in, he's out. Wait a second, Rikito-san just cracked him with a baseball bat. Oh crap. And Giant Baba's called for his teammates. Brody attacks Hashimoto. Tanaka and Fuji attack Hashimoto. Oh dear, this is just a shame. Rikito-san just looks and smirks at Hashimoto as it goes through. You have Brody attacking him. Tanaka beating him. Fuji attacking him. Just a beatdown beforehand. And Rikito-san just smirking at him all the while. But he doesn't even put his hands on Hashimoto. Flat out, I believe that our Japanese translator said, "You aren't even worth my punch," as he goes through. And after a few minutes of that, he just rolls Hashimoto in, and Giant Baba picks. Wait a second, Shinya got out at 2.
What?
I don't. This guy has a lot of fire. Let's just put it that way. We knew that Hashimoto's big benefit on the Mortal Realm was how much fire he had as a babyface, but he kicks out of all that at 2 to go through. And he keeps trying to get in a chopping battle with Baba, knowing that Baba has that brain chop to him. This kid is gonna be huge.
He's crazy enough to do it.
Yes. This was one of those where, if nothing else, Hashimoto might be the future on this stuff, even beyond it. And Rikito-san is pissed off as Hashimoto keeps attacking, smirking as he said, "Not this time," and just trying to get Baba, trying to get everything going, but ultimately he couldn't do it. The beating and all of Baba's attacks was just a little too much. Hashimoto finally falls to a brain chop. But man, did he go out like a G.
And here we go. 2 title matches.
Yup.
Andre the Giant, come on down.
Yup. And Andre the Giant had his match with Baba. And Baba's been one of Andre's biggest rivals for years, but ultimately the one plus you have to say on this one is that even if Baba was dominant and brutal, Hashimoto took so much out of the Giant that Andre was able to get him relatively quickly for an Andre versus Baba match. And powerbomb by Andre, and he gets the victory.
Well,
And then
he's not going to get his hands on him, but here comes Rikito-san.
And then there were 2.
Contender.
Yup.
Can he unseat the Giant?
Yup. And this is where it went through. Rikito-san walks, waits, and then Baba and Brody and Tanaka and Fuji go after Andre with brutality. More of the attacks, more of the fight. Rikito-san just watches and smiles. Andre tries.
Where's Dusty in all of this? Would he be doing something?
I think.
That's probably not. What about Dusty?
I think Dusty actually was tried to do something during the Hashimoto fight, but a Rainmaker by Rikito-san took him out of the battle as well. So, Yeah.
And I have to question why they weren't sent to that. I think Jack Tunney's got a few questions.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, that went through. The battle kept going. Andre tried to fight the four of them, but Rikito-san just waited. And one Rainmaker later, and Rikito-san is back in the biggest way possible. New Galactic Champion, Rikito-san. And to make matters worse, he's technically unable to wrestle on the red brand.
Yeah, I think that one's going to be lifted pretty fast.
Yeah. And that's going to be a big question mark going into this one because, heck, it could go for other ones, like just throwing things out there. Junkyard Dog is technically a Blue Brand superstar, and the Blue Brand never banned Rikito-san. Why doesn't Junkyard Dog just come out, cash in, and take the belt to SmackDown?
That would be a twist. There's a lot of things you got to ask about this. And wait, we'll get to that later. I'm in Celebration, and I know that music. He's back.
Oh dear, who are we talking about?
Oh yeah!
Oh my.
Rikito-san. Clever, don't you? Yeah. I'm behind a bunch of trying to turn it off. But you don't seem to understand. I'm evil. I got the madness. Yeah, just gonna pull stuff like that. Yeah. Son, you're coming. Macho Madness back in the ring here. I'm calling you out, brother. I'm calling for your title. I'm calling for your career here.
That's a very interesting turn of events because Randy Savage is luckily one of those people who can be face or heel whenever you need it. And if they're using him as a face right now against Rikito-san, I assume it's going to help push back things for the eventual Rikito-san Hashimoto showdown. So it is what it is.
Hashimoto stepped aside, Andre stepped aside, Dusty stepped aside. Everybody had a wing. So madness, him to Rikito-san coming out the champion. Yeah.
Yep. And what's this full card on for the Edenia show exactly?
Well, we know the red side, so let's run that down. We've got that title match. It is set. Randy Savage is taking on Rikito-san for the Galactic Championship.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Andre the Giant, he's mad at the rest of the Rising Suns. He's going to be taking on Giant Bob. But we know this. Nick Bachman will try to get back onto his winning ways. He's facing Shinya Hashimoto. As we mentioned, six-man tag, Intercontinental tag titles on the line. Mark Marr, who's fully against Tom Zank, Rick Rude, Kurt Hennig.
Wait a second. I'm hearing word from the ALWF group on this one that this wasn't just those ones. The ladies went after Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Hennig and asked, "What about us, big boys?" And they wanted something else. It's been added to this match where it could even add another one. Penny Banner will be with Los Gringos Locos. Sherry Martel will be with the Robbinsdale Connection. It's going to be 3 titles on the line, and there's the possibility of 2 titles changing hands, but at least one will.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to get to the Blue Brand, we have to discuss the road to Edenia.
Yep.
Ready for this?
Yep.
All right. Should be quick here. Week 1, Terry Von Erich defeated Carl Gotch. Vern Gagne over Ed Lewis. Eddie Gilbert beat Terry Gordon. Freddie Blassie, he counted out the Big Daddy. Junkyard Dog over Hector Garza and Buddy Rogers beat Carol Maya. Week 2, Tara Masawa makes his debut and takes out Hector Garza. Luthez steps in. He beats Terry Gordon. Carl Gotch over the Big Daddy. Buddy Rogers beats Ed Lewis. Paraguayo over Gagne in a bit of an upset. And Kerry Von Erich pulls off Freddie Blasky and the rest of Devastation Incorporated. Week 3. Big Daddy is on the board beating Hector Garza. Lou Thez squashes Ed Lewis. Buddy Rogers beats Terry Gordy by disqualification. JYD over Freddie Blasky. Eddie Gilbert pulls off Paraguayo, and it was a surprising big match. And then Taro Basel over Carl Gotch in what so far was the match determined. On to week 4, Terry Gordy over Vern Gagne. Ed Lewis upsets Eddie Gilbert. Hector Garza also with an upset, Terry Von Erich. With the help of Devastation Incorporated, it was Freddie Blassie over Mitsuru Masala. JYD knocks off Carl Gotch, and Lou Thez fends off Paraguayo. On to week 5, Terry Gordy beats Ed Lewis. Freddie Blassie used 4-0 to beat Carl Gotch. Vern Gagne pulls off Eddie Gilbert. Terry Von Erich over the Big Daddy. Mitsuru Masala defeats Junkyard Dog. And in the battle of unbeaten, Buddy Rogers knocked off Lou Thez with about a minute left on the clock fight. Week 6, Paraguayo Jr. over Ed Lewis. Hector Garza beats Freddie Blassie when the disqualification occurs. JYD gets the power slam on Big Daddy and pins him. Lou Thez makes Eddie Gilbert submit. Vern Gagne surprises Buddy Rogers with a quick cradle and victory to keep that block open. And Kerry Von Erich and Mitsuru Masala in the surprise of the tournament go the full 20 minutes for a time. So, last week, here's how it stood. Buddy Rogers was going to take on Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. With a win, he had the block on lockdown. Otherwise, the winner of Lou Thez versus Vern Gagne was going to take A-Block. In B-Block, Junkyard Dog had a half-game lead on Kerry Von Erich and Mitsuru Masala. Masala was facing Big Daddy. Like an easy win for him, but who knows? Meanwhile, JYD and Kerry Von Erich were squaring off. You ready?
Yep.
On the undercard, Carl Gotch over Hector Garza with the neutralizer. Paraguayo Jr. beat Terry Gordy with Balanza. In the first shot, thanks in large part to the actions of Devastation Incorporated during a blackout. We saw Fireball, we can't really prove anything. Big Daddy hits Mitsuru Masala and he's out. Buddy Rogers and Eddie Gilbert. Rogers dominated most of the match. Not cocky. And during the setup of the figure 4, Gilbert with the cradle, he hung the tights for good measure. He upsets Buddy Rogers and knocks him out of the tournament. Junkyard Dog and Kerry Von Erich. A really good brawl, a good power match. We weren't sure what was going to happen here. It went back and forth. JYD looked like he had to get Kerry up with a thump, but while he was holding Kerry used his big left hand and slapped on JYD's head, had the claw. He held it. He forced JYD down, started bashing his head in the back, keeping the claw on. He knocked JYD out, and Kerry Von Erich won B-Block. A bit of a surprise, but it wasn't even the biggest surprise tonight. Because Lou Thez, seemingly with everything controlled in a great catch-as-catch-can match, apparently he can't teach old dog new tricks. Vern Gagne with a backstabber, which he turned into a sleeper with body scissors, and Lou Thez was out by TKO. Folks, your championship for the win of Edenia is of the Edenia tournament is Vern Gagne and Kerry Von Erich. Your thoughts on this match? I know it's not what you expected with this Roman out.
Honestly, I think that it's a pretty much a surprise there on it, where this match is one of those which, even in the moral realm, if both guys were on their game on it, that could be a 5-star match right there. The only questions, and luckily in the afterlife, everyone's on their game, so that's always a plus there as well.
Well, they're physically on their game. The question is, mentally, are they going to be able to be on the same page? Because we know Kerry was all about the pedal pipeline, but there's never really one that's angled for them. That's where Gagne did everything.
Yeah. Well, Gagne also was one of those guys that was very serious, very amateur at wrestling, very oriented about technical styles, and you had Kerry, who was much more of a power guy. And So there's the question mark there as well.
Well, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Lock up. Here he has the strength advantage. Next guy into the corner. Right. Now he comes out, got the waist lock. He's going to bring down to the right. Now, what? Kerry fights his way back to the standing position. Snap there by Kerry. Drop kick. Hip toss. He covers. One. No. Ganya's up. Hip toss in his own. Into an arm bar. Kerry puts Ganya back in the ropes. Sends him in. Clothesline is done. Ganya with a crucifix. One. Two. Nope. Not going to get it. Monkey foot by Kerry is going to comes in. Drops some elbows. Kicks. Chin lock. Now Kerry will get a little stronger in the early going here. Ganya able to elbow out. Kerry switches to a sleeper, but that's Ganya. He knows a jawbreaker. Now just Kerry come in, drops home, and he's moving away. He's hooking it into an Indian death lock. Drop it down several times, trying to get that bridge, but Kerry is too strong at this point. Makes the ropes. There will be outside, checks on his leg. It's pretty good. Ganya fighting him back in. Match ready to continue. No, Kerry catches Ganya with the left hand. Slingshot into a drop kick. Ganya's in trouble in the corner. Kerry's got him. Trap. Up the second rope. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And brings him out. Big suplex. Kerry floating over. 1, 2. Nope, that's not going to do it. And the claw's out. He's looking for the claw. No, Ganya keeps stopping. Fireman's Kerry takedown into a body scissors. He's got arm control. Oh, Ganya looking very solid on the mat here. I don't know what Kerry's going to do. Now he's modifying into a circle. It's a bow and arrow. I don't see where Kerry's going to go. Wait, Kerry leading back. Ganya, look out, shoulders to the mat. Ganya has to let go. Close like that. Ganya coming back. Spinning heel kick. Wow, I didn't know he had that. An overhead suplex by Ganya. Cover. 2 and up. Now Ganya looking for this is how he's survived. No, Kerry with the grilling. You want to see him coming too? No, not going to happen. Now you turn his power slam by Kerry. 1, 2, no. Boy, you're not letting anything back here. Kerry up to the top. What is Kerry doing going to the top rope? I know he has some next but I haven't seen this much. Ganya beats him up there. He's caught up. He's going to throw him off. Now Ganya going up. This behaves. You know, he's like that missile drop kick. It's released this son Greg. Kerry pulling himself up to his feet. There's the drop kick. The cover. 1, 2, no. Now Kerry pulling himself up the ropes. Ganya's got him. He's measuring him. The backstabber, no. Kerry hangs on. Ganya's down. Off the ropes. Here comes the distance. No. Ganya has the Fireman's here. What's doing? Airplane spin. Dropping Kerry on the top rope with a hot shot. Kerry falls to the outside. I don't know where this is going here. And Ganya going back up top. Well, he's not trying to hold anything back here. And he leaps like, wow. Folks, I'm surprised here. He on to Kerry and caught a sleeper in mid-air, taking his back on the jump. Kerry is dazed. He's running around. He's staggering around. It's like fucking Bronco out there. And he just got Ganya right into the post. Both men are down. The count is off. I don't know what's going to happen if both men are thrown down. We haven't had a draw in the championship before. 6, 7, 8, 9. Ganya's in. Kerry's in. Oh my Ganya. 1, 2, no. Going for a small pack. No. Kerry rolls through, stands up. He's got Ganya hooked. Whoa! Inverted power slam. It's like the tour of the islands. 1, 2, no. Oh my goodness, now he's close. Now he's looking for the claw. He's looking for the claw. Oh, it's on. He's got it. Ganya fading. Ganya trying to pull Kerry to the ropes, but Kerry's got the strength advantage. He's got control with both hands. Ganya is down to his knee. How's he going to get up there? Oh, tripped him with a double leg. Tap that cover. 2, no. Kerry up. Back boot to Ganya. 1, 2, still no. Now Kerry gets his punch. Ganya ducks. Ganya's hooking up. He's going to get backslide. They're fighting to control the backslide. It's going to be crazy. Oh, Kerry's going to on the ground. What is he doing? He's hooking a leg. He just hit him with a gory bomb out of nowhere. A gory bomb by Kerry. Just let's connect. 1, 2, and 3. Eric Vern Gagne was up with what they had after a 17-minute war. Ladies and gentlemen, TV champ Kerry Von Erich gets his shot at the big one against Roddy Piper coming up in Edenia. Woo! That's the kind of thing you want to final do.
Yeah. This was one of those things that it basically brought Vern Gagne back from the dead on this one. I thought he was going to slowly make his way down the card as it gotten more and more experienced on it, but right now Vern Gagne is back. That is a big thing. We knew Kerry Von Erich is on the rise anyway, but this revitalized the career of Vern Gagne.
And man, what a final match, huh?
Yeah, that was something amazing.
I don't know. Back at both guys, all that stuff. Never like Vern Gagne diving off the outside, a sweeper isn't landed, or Kerry Von Erich getting a gory bomb out of the backslide attempt. And this is really what ALWF is all about. People taking moves and that they do that they had thought of at the time and adding to.
Yeah, well, that's one of the pluses. You have an eternity to get better, so you have to find ways otherwise.
So we know that's going to be Kerry Von Erich going to Roddy Piper's ALWF Heavyweight Championship. Here's the rest of the edition from the ring. Buddy Rogers has been leading Vern Gagne for his slide for his tour. In a rematch he showed his Devastation Incorporated on Cesaro Gonzalez, Jumbo Tsuruta, El Santo, Corey Bruno. This time it's an elimination match. Los Perros del Mal go at each other with a shot at the TV title on the line. Remember, with regards to the defeat of Kerry Von Erich, he gets a future title shot. But he's putting on the line against Mario Mayo Jr.
This goes to the same question mark, though, on it, where what happens if Kerry Von Erich wins the heavyweight title? Does this match become a TV title match outright? Because I believe that you only get to hold one title at a time, which is the same problem with why you don't see them just say, okay, Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr go after the tag titles, because they can only hold one belt.
Right, we're going to have to see where that's going. And how about this? This is a very interesting calculation by Stu Hart and the guys a 4-way ladder match for the tag titles. And none of these guys will be sounding like ladder match people. You've got Bruno Sammartino and Nick Morales, who are champions. You've got Ed Lewis and Billy Robinson, Sandow Corporation. You've got Vancouver Giants, John Teddy and Domino Jonathan. You've got Frank and Vern Gagne.
It's going to...
You don't really think of these guys as ladder match people.
I don't know, honestly, because the Vancouver Giants give me a very good War Raiders or Viking experience or Viking Raiders or whatever WWE calls them vibe to me. So they have and we know that the Viking Raiders have done well in ladder matches in the past. We know that Billy Robinson and Ed Strangler Lewis are great technical wrestlers, as are Frank and Carl Gotch. So they could conceivably be able to do some good technical moves, like, say, how a Chris Jericho or a Chris Benoit do in ladder matches. The only question mark is the Kings of New York, and you always need some strong men to do some great strength spots. Even though there's not a loony, someone to just go off the ladder, this seems like a pretty straightforward ladder match. And also you have the case of there's a lot of people who'd be very good at defense in the match. A lot of people would be good at offense. There's a lot of people up there. Heck, even with the Sandow Corporation and how they can be, you can even imagine them having the always fun person who's scared of heights in the match.
Yeah, and this is one of these matches where the key phrase is going to be the ladder is in play.
Yeah. Yeah, this seems like one of those matches that's not going to be jump off the ladder, but use the ladder in the form of the match.
And as for that, as for the special selection match, we now have received word the Jack Tunney and the boys on the Red Brand are sending Dusty Rhodes into the match. Steve Martin with the Blue Brand are sending J1 into the match. So there's a heck of a fight. hair dog.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty fun on it. Like, I'm surprised they never really hooked up in the mortal realm, but it would probably be a fun match if they did.
Well, they're just never in the same territory. It's never really on top at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's 10 big matches for Edenia coming up in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
What really stands out to you as far as being a potential show stealer or being something that will be a must watch?
Well, honestly, the biggest show stealer to me seems like it's going to be Roddy Piper versus Kerry Von Erich. They're the two hottest names on the Blue brand, and seeing them go head to head, I don't know who I'd pick to win in that one. I also, one of the most blue chip things on it is Andre the Giant versus Giant Baba. It's like, at least once a year, Andre and Baba are going to hook up, but it's always fun, and you never feel like you're just unsatisfied by it. So, it's at least good. It's not, everything about it, but it's going to be at least 3 stars right there. And that's at least.
There's always an attraction when you put Godzilla against King Kong.
Exactly. There's never, going into this is going to be a good match because you've seen it many times and it's always very good.
A lot of variety of events. I'm really enjoying where this is going. I think Hashimoto and Boxing
it's going to be a good question mark because Hashimoto getting his biggest challenge outside of Rikito-zan will be very good there as well, but I'm not sure with Bockwinkel how well it goes because the big question is what can Heenan do with Hashimoto on it, and I don't know how good that matchup's going to be, so that's going to be a question mark to me. It's similar to Vern Gagne versus Buddy Rogers, where it's a dream match. It's a match that never quite happened in the mortal realm because Buddy Rogers wouldn't defend against Vern Gagne, but it's also one where it's going to be kind of boring if you think about it, but it'll be completely solid nonetheless.
Something said for a good round.
Yeah.
Well, let's not get down on side.
Yeah. Yeah, ultimately it seems like at least going into it you're going to have at least one title change. Going into it there's one match that's going to be at least 3 stars. So this seems like one where even if you don't know it, it's going to be a good match and worthwhile off just before you even watch it. And that's always a surprise with a pay-per-view.
And nothing wrong with that. Well, folks, we'll see you again when it's time for Edenia. Hey, Green, thanks for having me on the air.
No problem. Thanks for being here on this test run. So,
and folks, this is where we're going to be doing a lot of.
Yep.